Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently. Don't
miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
And welcome once again to On the Money, where we're focused on the UK's cost of living crisis, helping you to beat the squeeze. I'm Liam Halligan, and for the next hour, we'll be discussing energy bills and energy security as Russia finds new excuses to limit gas supplies to Western Europe. And a cross-party committee of MPs says the government needs to do more to help cash-strapped families to cope. Plus, as family budgets are stretched, we examine the rising cost of broadband and phone data, debating how you can access the internet for free. On the Money, after the GB News headlines with Rosie Wright.
Good afternoon, it's 1 minute past 1. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date on GB News. The two candidates to become the UK's next Prime Minister will face off again tonight, following a heated first head-to-head debate. The pair traded blows over tax, with the Foreign Secretary saying Rishi Sunak would lead the country into recession. But the former Chancellor claimed there was nothing conservative about Mrs Truss's approach.
Under my plans, we would start paying down the debt in 3 years' time. So I'm not putting it on the never, never. I would start paying it down in 3 years.
Liz, that's simply not right. You promised almost £40 billion of unfunded tax cuts, £40 billion more borrowing. That is the country's credit card. It's our children and grandchildren, everyone here's kids, who are going to have to pick up the tab for that.
The Shadow Financial Secretary James Murray told us the debate shows how the two candidates don't have concrete solutions to the cost of living.
What I found quite astonishing is it was basically an hour of two people who want to be leader of the Conservative Party totally trashing the last 12 years of the Conservatives in government, really pointing out all of the huge failings with what the Conservatives have done over the last 12 years, and then offering no real solutions to what to do next.
Archie Battersby's parents are vowing to continue their son's life support fight despite a legal ruling that treatment can stop. Yesterday, appeal court judges ruled doctors at the Royal London Hospital could lawfully stop providing life-saving care. That could happen in less than 24 hours. The 12-year-old hasn't regained consciousness since suffering an accident at home in April. Yesterday, Archie's father was rushed to hospital with a suspected stroke or heart attack, but families say he'll be released later today. Archie's mother, Holly, told GB News they're going to appeal their case to a higher court.
I believe we've still got one more option, which obviously we've come this far. I'm not going to stop now.
What is that option?
There's a possibility, the United Nations or the European Court, I believe. So we're deciding today. Obviously, it's not something any parent wants to face. Again, I'm just going to give it all I can until I can't go no more.
The government doesn't know whether the coronavirus traffic light travel system that was enforced on those arriving into the UK actually worked. That's the conclusion of the Public Accounts Committee, who say nearly £500 million was spent on the quarantine scheme that caused huge confusion, with 10 rule changes in a year. Arrivals from red list countries had to stay in a quarantine hotel for at least 10 days. Only 2% of those guests tested positive. MPs have accused the energy regulator Ofgem of being negligent. The Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy says the government needs to change its out-of-date energy bill support for households. They added that a massive insulation drive needs to be launched urgently, as it would permanently bring down bills. Energy expert Will Hudson told us there are things we can do to cut our energy costs.
Britain has got the oldest housing stock in Europe, right? And we can take pride, I think, in having built houses that were made to last. But those houses are drafty. They leak energy. And if you can plug those leaks, you're going to save up to £600 from your bill. So the message of yesteryear was switch energy supplier to get the best price. I think the message going forward is look for energy efficiency so as to reduce your energy usage.
Tributes are being made following the death of the former Ulster Unionist Party leader, Lord David Trimble, who was one of the principal architects of the Good Friday Agreement. Our Northern Ireland reporter, Dougie Beattie, has more.
Lord Trimble of Lisnagarvey dies aged 77. He was one of the main architects of the Good Friday Agreement, and his legacy will be 25 years of peace in Northern Ireland.
Network Rail is advising people not to travel by rail tomorrow unless absolutely necessary due to another day of strikes. More than 40,000 members of the RMT union and 14 train operators are going to walk out in a dispute over jobs, pay and conditions. Network Rail says only 20% of services will run. Some places will have no trains at all. To minimise disruption, they've published a special timetable showing many trains will start later and finish earlier. This is GB News. I'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's head back to Liam and On the Money.
Coming up on The Money today, Russia's further limiting gas supplies to Western Europe from tomorrow as Moscow turns the screw. And a committee of MPs is calling for the government to do more to help households struggling with their fuel bills. Germany and the European Commission are proposing gas rationing this autumn. Could the same happen here? We hold a detailed discussion. And if you're in West Yorkshire struggling with the rising cost of living, why not head over to the shop where everything is 20p? From bikes to jewellery, we hear about the shop helping locals find a bargain. Plus, it's not just food and energy UK households are struggling with, because broadband and mobile phone data, that is, internet access, also comes at a cost. We'll be hearing from a charity donating free data to those most affected by the cost of living crisis. And On the Money returns to its regular feature, Startup Britain. Today we meet Matthias Tengblad. He's co-founder at Corite, a grassroots music platform made for artists and funded by their fans. That's later in the show. And as ever, email GBViews at GBNews or tweet GBNews. Let me know what you think about the issues raised in today's show. This is GB News. I'm Liam Halligan, and you're On the Money. Now, poor and vulnerable households will need more financial help this autumn, given the extent to which household utility bills are set to rise. That's the conclusion of a cross-party committee of MPs, who today accused the energy regulator Ofgem of negligence. It's already clear, given high wholesale energy prices, that when Ofgem resets the energy price cap for households this October, our gas and electricity bills are set to soar even more. As quick as the government's handing out assistance, it's being overtaken by events as energy prices keep rising. Last October, Ofgem set the energy price cap, which regulates average household fuel bills, at £1,277. In April this year, that cap rose significantly to £1,970. But now, with war in Ukraine sending wholesale gas prices soaring, gas used to generate 40% of our electricity, remember, average household bills could rise above £3,000 a year from October, when a new Ofgem cap takes effect. This cap is of huge importance, impacting 22 million UK households. Energy prices played a big part in last night's debate between Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak. The two prime ministerial hopefuls were asked what they would do to help families when prices rise this autumn. The former Chancellor refused to give specifics, saying he'd make a judgment based on this autumn's wholesale energy prices. But Truss pledged once again to remove renewable energy subsidies on utilities, which currently account for around 25% of household electricity bills. Looming over this energy debate is the controversial Nordstrom Pipeline, which pumps gas from Russia to Germany, the second leg of which opened earlier this year. On Monday, Russia's Gazprom said it needed to halt the operation of a turbine, meaning flows through Nord Stream 1 from Russia to Germany will drop to just 20% of capacity from tomorrow. It's the latest in a series of gas supply disruptions, all of which Russia blames on technical factors. Western European countries, including the UK, could now struggle to fill gas storage units ahead of this autumn and winter, leading to even more expensive gas and further undermining our energy security. Here in the UK, households are in line to receive £400 of government assistance with their domestic energy bills. But the Commons Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy Committee, in its report today, says more is needed. The impact of the energy price crisis on households is likely to cause an unacceptable rise in fuel poverty and hardship this winter, said the Bayes Committee. The government must immediately update its support, targeting this at customers on low incomes, the fuel poor and in vulnerable circumstances, and develop a scheme to support vulnerable customers to accelerate the repayment of energy debt resulting from this crisis. Now, industry sources have told me that European gas storage facilities are currently around 2/3 full. But it's not enough, they say. That's why politicians in Germany and elsewhere, including the European Commission, are now proposing gas rationing in the coming months. While the UK is less directly dependent on Russian gas, we are, of course, impacted, like everyone else, by any spike in prices resulting from Moscow's tactics. So that's our on-the-money question today. Could we see gas rationing here in the UK? Grown-up conversation with people who really know their stuff. That's what we do here on The Money. Returning to the show, I'm delighted to welcome back Christina Rabakaite. She's an energy expert. She's CEO of the renewable energy platform Papaya. Christina, great to have you with us. And with me in the studio, Head of Investment at Interactive Investor. She's back. It's Victoria Scholar. Good to see you too, Victoria. Christina, now, this is your business. This is the industry you work in. Papaya is a very innovative, renewable energy platform. You're also very much alive to the geopolitics of this, hailing from the Baltic states as you do. Just talk in the first instance about how serious you think this action by Moscow is. Seriously limiting now gas supplies that are going to be pumped through that Nord Stream pipeline to Germany.
I think it is extremely serious, and we should always plan for the worst, especially coming into the winter. We can't be going into the winter hoping that it's going to be a warm winter, hoping that wind is going to blow. We need proper preparations and a plan in place that will help us from having blackouts and people getting cold or, starving.
Now, Victoria, you're very much someone who looks at the financial markets day in, day out. That's what you do for a living. Are we seeing the implications of this rising geopolitical tension? Because in recent weeks and months, gas prices have come off a little. But it does now seem to me that under the guise of technical factors, we need a new turbine from Canada, it hasn't arrived yet, or we need to do some maintenance, Moscow is now gradually tightening the squeeze on Western Europe gas supplies.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that Putin has been weaponising gas, and this is sort of a war on a new front in the sense that we're seeing the war on gas. In terms of what we've seen in terms of price action, we saw prices double in June. Now, before the summer, the price per megawatt hour typically was below 40 euros in Europe. Now, when we look at the forward market, we're looking at something around 130 euros for this time next year, and then about 80 euros for the year after that. So the interesting thing is that this isn't necessarily just a crisis for now. It looks as though this is going to have medium and long-term implications as well. And it's the threat of Putin turning off the taps that's keeping prices elevated, even though that Nordstrom pipeline has come back online. For now, that threat will keep prices high.
And of course, Christina, gas supplies through Ukraine, which was the main route before the Nord Stream pipelines were built over the last decade or so, they are also restricted due to war. Now, you've made your life here in the UK, you've built a business here in the UK, but you do hail from the Baltic states. To what extent do you think the UK is vulnerable compared to the European Union countries? We're often told, oh, you know, we're not as reliant as the Germans are, but we are still on the end of that European gas complex, aren't we? And we're also very reliant on the Norwegians for our imported gas, right?
Correct. And I think people forget that gas is a global market. So even if we might not be as reliant as Germans are, we still have to pay the global prices. So Germany being vulnerable, Norway being one vulnerable, all the other countries being vulnerable, all the Baltic states being vulnerable, we're all in the same market. We're suffering in exactly the same way. So that's sort of one of the things to definitely think about. You know, and why UK might be as more vulnerable in many ways than Germany, for example, is because, you know, we decommissioned our coal power stations to the point where they can't just be brought back to life in an instant. In Germany, they've got some capacity to bring coal back this winter and support themselves in terms of energy security. It's not great in terms of net zero, but really, you know, we're all just as vulnerable as each other, and you know, if US is not going to step in, then we'll genuinely struggle.
The US, of course, the LNG, liquefied natural gas, a growing export industry in the US. They're making hay, aren't they? Putting liquefying gas, which takes a lot of energy, putting it in ships and then crossing the Atlantic with that gas. Something that Christina said there, Victoria, my ears pricked up. She talked about gas storage. Now, the British government and Centrica, they came to the decision to close the Rough gas storage facility, didn't they? The undersea storage facility off the coast of Yorkshire. I know a lot of people in financial markets have noticed that. From a financial perspective, how vulnerable do you think we really are, given that we have a lot less gas storage than many of the big European Union economies? So even if we could get more gas, we've got nowhere to put it.
Yeah, I think that's one of the big things. You know, we're a small island. We're very globalised in terms of our connections with trading, with our Eurozone partners, Germany, of course, being the largest economy there. So, you know, when Germany sneezes, we also catch a cold. So we're extremely dependent on other economies for our trade. Now, it's interesting in terms of the dynamics of the macroeconomy right now, because we've spoken a lot about inflation, rising gas prices, clearly extremely inflationary. And also another major concern is recession. And if we continue to see gas prices push higher, the risk of an economic malaise increases. Now, one knock-on effect of that could be that if we do see prices induce a recession, we will see a slowdown in demand. But in the sort of immediate term, the biggest risks are that we're going to exacerbate the inflationary problem and we're going to increase the risk of a slowdown.
Just before we develop the conversation, Christina, I wanted to mention to you something which I know people in financial markets noticed. The National Grid paid £9,724 per megawatt hour at one point last week. That's 5,000% more than the typical price. We bought that gas from Belgium last Wednesday to prevent, I'm told, South East London losing power. That strikes me as a near miss, to have an actual power outage in the UK, something we haven't seen since I was a lad back in the early 70s during the coal strikes.
So I think having that happening in the summer period is even more frightening going into winter. So can you imagine now, we've got the solar, not many people are necessarily using that much gas at the moment. It's winter when all the consumption really kicks in. So it's genuinely frightening, to see what's going to happen if we have a cold winter and if we don't, have some sort of support in place to manage these. UK does have, as you mentioned, storage. We had Rough that. But it's not going to be back online this winter. It's just not possible. The government are in talks to bring it back as soon as they can, because it's stupid what's going on right now. We've got a lot of gas coming through the country, cheap gas, and that cheap gas is being sent to Europe, and then we end up buying it back at more expensive prices. So it's just being sent around, picks up a lot of value, and then comes back to us to be consumed at really high prices, purely because we cannot store it. So how are we meant to prepare for winter? I don't know.
That's absolutely gobsmacking. As I said, grown-up discussions with people who really know their stuff here on The Money. Stay with us. We're going to go to a break, but we are going to continue this really crucial discussion. Could gas rationing happen in the UK this autumn, as a cross-party committee of MPs calls on the government to do more to help cash-strapped families with their fuel bills? This is On The Money with me, Liam Halligan. Stay with us.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV. On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you. We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Welcome back. You're on The Money with me, Liam Halligan. It's 1:21. We are discussing the crucial question of could gas rationing come to the UK? Why do I say that? Because Vladimir Putin is turning the screw, limiting gas supplies to Western Europe further through that now vital Nordstrom Pipeline between Russia and Germany. And a cross-party committee of MPs is calling on the government to do more, provide more assistance to households when energy prices and household utility bills pretty much inevitably now go up by a hefty amount when the Ofgem energy price cap is reset this autumn. Now, the committee of MPs have criticised Ofgem. Ofgem have responded with a statement. The energy regulator says we are working hard to reform the entire market, as well as closely scrutinising and holding individual energy suppliers to account to further strengthen the regulatory regime. The Committee of MPs also criticised the Department for Energy, Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy. The department has come back with a statement. No national government can control global inflation pressures. However, we've introduced an extraordinary package of support to help households. Christina Rabakaiti, will it be enough? We're already seeing households are set to get a £400 package of assistance with their household energy bills. If the Ofgem energy price cap, as I just said, is round at about £2,000 at the moment, given where wholesale gas prices have been in recent months and are going, are we looking at £3,000 plus as the average annual household utility bill?
It looks like that's going to be at least sort of one of the next rises, and I'm pretty sure, looking at where the markets are right now and sort of being in the industry every single day and watching the volatility, I cannot imagine that it's going to come down if by April. I think it might rise again. You know, but one of the things that I think we're not sort of talking about enough is that the price cap was never put in place to you know, support the customers with their energy bills. It was put in place to basically stop utilities from making too much profit. So we're now still putting so much emphasis on a piece of policy that was in place for a completely different reason. And so that's why I think Ofgem and all the other governments involved in this market restructuring should really just come up with new ideas and new policies to support the right you know, the right things within the market, and not sort of drill on the same one that wasn't in place for those reasons in the first place.
And just before I bring in Victoria Scholar once more, let me ask you again, Christina. Papaya is a renewable energy trading platform. You've talked about it here on The Money before. We did a Money Talks interview, which GBNews viewers and listeners can look up if they want to hear more about that. How do you feel when you hear the woman who's, you know, could well be our next Prime Minister, Liz Truss, saying that part of the package of measures she wants to implement this autumn is removing those renewable subsidies on our energy bills, which currently account for around 25% of our energy bills, that money going to renewable energy companies. Germany's removed those renewable subsidies on electricity bills. Should we do the same in the UK now? Not scrapping them entirely, but suspending them for now as we get through this massive cost of living energy price squeeze?
So from my perspective, and I think coming from renewables industry, you know, the transition is going to cost money. And obviously we want to keep it under control, and we don't want people, you know, going cold and, you know, not having enough food for this winter. But I think every, you know, delay and every cut that we're making right now is just going to extend the crisis going forward. So, you know, if we suspend the renewables subsidies for the next, you know, months or a year, we'll just the high prices will just stay 6 months or a year longer with us. So, you know, we need to make the right cuts in the right sort of places to make sure that the future is still going to be protected, and there is some you know, protection there to actually reduce the prices going forward. And you know, maybe moving those sort of costs into general taxation is probably a better option, because then the guys that are paying you know, more and actually have more cash to spend can still carry on that support towards the renewable industry. Cutting it completely is not a good idea. It's not. It might help short term a little bit on sort of you know, the households that are really struggling, but they will continue struggling and for longer. So I'm definitely not in favour of that.
We'll continue that aspect of our discussion, Christina. I reckon it will happen, but we will see. Putting your crystal ball to the fore, Victoria Scholar, what do you think is going to happen here? You mentioned earlier financial markets are pricing in higher wholesale gas and energy prices this autumn and into next year, and then they fall off the year after. That suggests a kind of sustained war economic war, certainly between Russia and the West.
Well, so far there doesn't really seem to be any signs that the war in Ukraine is easing off, and there certainly don't seem to be any indication that there's going to be any kind of regime change within Russia. So given those two factors, it does look as though this so-called gas war could be a prolonged period. And I just got a timely notification on my phone that said that US natural gas prices are up 10% today.
Crikey.
They've rallied to a 14-year high. So, you know, we were talking about whether or not this was a localised issue. This is very much a global issue.
We were talking about the US coming to the rescue with its LNG shipments across the Atlantic, but even the source gas in the US is 10% more expensive. LNG prices are going to go up even more, given the cost of processing and then transporting that LNG.
Exactly. So we're seeing energy and commodity price inflation that's affecting not just Europe, but the United States as well, and potentially other countries as well.
Victoria, good to talk to you. A very difficult subject, but we always benefit from your insights and expertise. Victoria Scholar of Interactive Investor, and indeed Christina Rabukaiti. Great to have you back on the show, Christina. We will, of course, continue this discussion. Now, we've all seen pound shops on the high street. How about the UK's cheapest shop, where everything, and I mean everything they sell, is 20p? It's run by Stuart Nelson and his dad, Steve. They opened 5 years ago. And the cost of living squeeze means more and more people are turning to them to help make ends meet. Our reporter, Paul Hawkins, went along with his 20p pieces at the ready to Otley in Yorkshire to speak to Stuart and to have a rummage through the bargains.
It's like a little car boot sale on the inside, but you don't have to bid for things. Everything's just 20p each. We've got massive amounts of stuff. It changes every day as well.
For kids of a certain age, this is a DVD. Surely no one is going to buy one of these.
People still buy them today.
This is a blank one that someone's made themselves.
Yeah.
Amazing. There might be one in here where they've taped the radio. Right? Do you remember we used to do that? And what sort of people come into shop?
We have everyone. Any different walks of life, millionaires, people in pay-to-paycheck, students coming out of Leeds, absolutely everyone.
£2 for the videos as well. Yeah, you've got 10 items, yes, so £2. Oh, is it 10 items? Yeah, everything's 20p in 20p.
We've seen a big influx because of the cost of living going through the roof, that more people are coming to the shop. It helps people out at 20p a piece. They can go and get any essential items they need, any bits and pieces. You know, we've got a children's bike we sold this Monday, just gone, and 20p a piece. It's going to go to a little girl, and they're going to enjoy it.
Are you money laundering again?
Yeah. It's a wonderful little shop. You can find all sorts of little, treasures.
Do you like this shop?
Yeah. I like looking at the books. I'm a book reader. I'm not Kindle.
What's the best thing about it? The price. How do you make money when everything is 20p? Where the hell is the profit margin?
The profit margin is in the shop. We buy everything a lot in wholesale. We buy massive amount of things to get in, 100,000 items at a time. We'll do job lots. We'll buy wherever we can if the margin's right.
And then over here, got records, vinyl, and there are some bargains that you could find here, right? Maybe stuff that's worth more than 20p.
Yeah. We had someone purchase a gold ring. There was £120, right? Retailed £120 or more, bought it for 20p because we had it with all costume jewellery. Like I say, anything that comes in goes out.
Did you know it was 120p when you put it out there?
We didn't know.
Have you got Eamon Holmes' autobiography here? This Is My Life?
Probably somewhere.
It might be in here somewhere. People are still using these then?
Yeah.
You don't need Google Maps or Waze.
Got 25 inches. It's all right, love. No hurry. It's not 25, it's 20. Can you take it out? Yeah.
Do you think if things keep going as they are, you might have to go become the 30p shop?
No, we're always the 20p shop. We'd love to have more space. Come 10 years' time, 20 years' time, I'd love to have, a few little shops everywhere, so we're helping out a lot more people.
Paul Hawkins, GB News.
Paul Hawkins there in West Yorkshire, where they love a bargain. This is On the Money with me, Liam Halligan. Coming up, as the cost of living crisis worsens, it's not just food and energy prices cash-strapped households are struggling with, because data's getting more expensive. That's internet access, and people are having to face whether they can live without it. More on that later, after the GB News headlines with with Rosie Wright.
Good afternoon. It is 1:32. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date on GB News. The two candidates to become the UK's next Prime Minister will face off again tonight following a heated first head-to-head debate. The pair traded blows over tax, with the Foreign Secretary saying Rishi Sunak would lead the country into recession. But the former Chancellor claimed there was nothing Conservative about Liz Truss's approach.
Under my plans, we would start paying down the debt in 3 years' time. So I'm not putting it on the never. I would start paying it down in 3 years.
Liz, that's simply not right. You promised almost £40 billion of unfunded tax cuts, £40 billion more borrowing. That is the country's credit card. It's our children and grandchildren, everyone here's kids. We're going to have to pick up the tab for that.
Public concern over inflation has reached its highest level in 40 years. A poll by Ipsos found that 45% of adults think it's one of the most important issues facing the country today, as prices continue to rise. In particular, those aged 18 to 34 were most concerned. MPs are criticising the government over its handling of the coronavirus traffic light system, which set the rules for those arriving into the UK. The Public Accounts Committee says nearly £500 million was spent on the scheme, but only 2% of those required to quarantine in hotels tested positive for the infection. The committee also says the government's approach to border controls and quarantine caused huge confusion, with 10 rule changes in 1 year. Network Rail's advising people not to travel by rail tomorrow unless absolutely necessary, due to another day of planned strikes. More than 40,000 members of the RMT union and 14 train operators have said they'll walk out in a dispute that continues over jobs, pay and conditions. Network Rail says only 20% of services will run and some places will have no trains at all. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.198 and 1.182 euros. The price of gold currently stands at £1,434 and 21 pence per ounce.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for real-time investment.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you. We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
And welcome back. This is GB News on TV, DAB, plus digital radio and online. It's 1:37. Now, as the cost of living crisis worsens, people across Britain are making difficult decisions, of course, on how to save money. But something rarely factored in is the cost of data. That's access to the internet via home broadband and indeed smartphones. Seen as one of society's most basic needs, with many aspects of daily life increasingly conducted online, internet access is something it's getting so much harder to live without. But it's not free, of course. And now new research suggests up to 9 in 10 people on low incomes could be forced to give up that vital internet access to afford food, electricity and water bills. That's why an organisation called the National Data Bank has been set up to donate free data to those in most need. Well, I'm joined now by Helen Milner, OBE. She's Chief Exec of Good Things Foundation. That's a charity that helps set up this National Data Bank. And Hafshadada Bai Sheikh. She's Director at Smart Life, a community interest company also working in this area. Helen Milner, let's turn to you first. Just outline the extent of this problem. It's something that won't have crossed the minds of many of our viewers and listeners, the cost of internet access. But those bills are rising, which means they're getting squeezed.
That's right. We know that there are 2 million households across the UK who have no internet, and most of them are struggling with those internet bills. So that's a really big number. And the cost of living crisis is making that even worse. We know that people are experiencing inflation on food, on fuel, and on utilities such as electricity and water. And the pandemic did actually show us all, well, all of those of us who are online, how essential it is. During lockdown, we couldn't do anything without being on the internet. And we now know that children have to do their homework online. If you want a job, you have to apply for that job online. And if you have any benefits, you need to apply for those benefits online and keep in touch online as well. So it's so important. And services were digitized at such a rapid pace during the pandemic that actually it's become the norm for both the public sector and the private sector to think that they can communicate and serve the public online.
Hafshadada Bai Sheikh, tell us how Smart Life fits in, and tell us the extent to which, if you know that reliance on the internet has risen as more and more services now, you can only really access them online, as Helen was just explaining.
Yes, absolutely. So a lot of services now have gone online, and the way that we have been supporting some of the most deprived and disadvantaged communities, families and individuals in Birmingham and in the area and throughout is by providing them with data which has been gifted via the National Data Bank, Virgin Media O2 and so many other telco companies. We couldn't do this work without that support. Families are really struggling out there. As we've heard, everything now is online, from booking your GP appointment to everything. Absolutely everything is online, to finding the best bargains, to saving money. Everything is online, and if they can't access online, then they're being left behind.
It's interesting, isn't it, Helen? Do you feel that internet access should be free, like a kind of God-given right, you know, like access to fresh air? Or do you accept it needs to be paid for, these services need to be provided? I mean, what do you think is the future of internet access as we go forward and become increasingly reliant on it, as Hafsh's just explained?
So I think that it's important that everybody gets access to the internet. I don't think it should be free for everybody. But we do know that these 2 million people need help. So that's why we created the National Data Bank with Virgin Media O2, so that we can help some of them. Around 500,000 people will be helped by the National Data Bank. But that still leaves 1.5 million people who are excluded and can't afford it. A lot of the broadband providers and mobile operators have got what's called a social tariff. So that means that actually they've got a reduced tariff for people who are on benefits like universal credit, and that's excellent. But eventually, I think there will need to be some kind of subsidy to make sure that everybody has the internet. One thing that's interesting is the internet. So broadband is still 20% VAT. So it's not a utility. It's not treated like utility. So your electricity and your water and your gas is only a 5% VAT bill. So actually, that might be something that we should look at to see if the VAT should be reduced. Maybe not for everybody, maybe for those social tariffs. But the National Data Bank, working with over 450 local organisations like Smartlight and Hafshire in Birmingham, that they all are now able to provide free mobile internet data through the O2 vouchers and with other mobile operators. So that's across all 4 nations, and the people on low incomes, adults, so the parents of the children as well as the adults themselves can access this for free, which is amazing, and it's really brilliant that the industry has really stepped up in this way.
Hafshire, I guess you'd agree that for some people, particularly the elderly, even if they've got internet access and you can help them get it or the National Data Bank can help them to get it, they still find life online very difficult, don't they? They find it's a mystery to them how the internet works. Do you think we're in danger of leaving people behind?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why we do the work that we do. And that's why Good Things Foundation and so many other smaller organisations do the work that we do, because we really are trying to fix that digital gap. And not just through providing skills learning, but also through providing devices as well, and also through providing the data. Really, it's like having a car. You need the skills to be able to drive it. Once you have the skills to be able to drive it, you then need to be able to fill it with that incredibly expensive petrol now as well. And that's what we're all trying to do here. That's the work. Children now are going online from the moment that they are babies. And really what we're doing, we're in danger here of saying to those children, as you grow up, yes, you can improve your skills, and of course you will have every support that you need here. But then as soon as you become an adult, guess what? We're going to take the data away. And we can't be doing that. We need to be in a position where everybody is on that even level playing field.
Well, look, this is clearly a really serious issue. I've learned a lot from this discussion today, and I'm really grateful to you both. Helen Milner, OBE of the Good Things Foundation, and indeed Hafshire Dada by Sheikh, Director at Smart Life. Thanks to both of you for that important discussion on data poverty and the importance of universal internet access, an issue I suspect that we'll return to. And now it's time for Startup Britain on the Money's regular slot, featuring some of the most successful and interesting startups across the UK. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Matthias Tengblad. He's CEO and co-founder of Corite. That's a grassroots music platform made for artists. Now, the music sector was, of course, one of the hardest hit by the pandemic, with closed venues, cancelled tours and postponed festivals. But Corite's helping artists to bounce back, supporting musicians spanning all continents and genres to release their music across the major streaming platforms. And this isn't your typical platform, because it's revolutionising the future of funding pop music. Corite's financed by its fans, allowing artists to distribute, market and fund their releases with their supporters. It's meant to bring them closer together while driving direct engagement. So here he is in the studio, Matthias Tengblad, my latest guest on Startup Britain. Matthias, great to have you here in the studio. Look, as regular On the Money listeners and viewers will know, I'm a musician. I have previously railed against the big streaming platforms not giving grassroots bands a chance, the relative decline in the importance of live music, gigs at small venues, in breaking bands, allowing them to build up their following, to attract attention from the bottom up, if you like. I guess, albeit in a digital space, Corite's trying to challenge all those tendencies.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we're doing is basically we let music lovers, as yourself, back or invest in artists, any size, small to big, And by doing so, they get a piece of the revenue when the songs are streaming on platforms like Spotify and Apple Music. And with that, we believe we can basically solve the big three problems of a modern artist, because the reality today is that you have 70,000 songs released on these platforms every single day. So the competition is crazy. So what you need as an artist is, if you have the talent, which is a prerequisite, you need the funding, and you need the marketing and promotion support. And to be able to build like a sustainable career, you also need to take care of your audience, the people that loves you. And that is what we're doing basically on Co-Write. We're trying to solve these problems, which are, I would say, general problems that I knew a lot about when I was heading up the commercials on Universal Music, which is one of the bigger labels in Scandinavia in the previous revolution of streaming. But yeah, that's what we're about.
How would you prove to me, or how would you illustrate that Co-Write has got a chance here of challenging the major streaming platforms? What statistics, diagnostics, examples would you point to, Matthias?
So let's take it from the fan perspective first, because I think that's the most important. You have talked about a lot of serious stuff here, but this is really fun stuff. So imagine if you found Mr. Ed Sheeran on the street corner in London like 2012, and you were able through Co-Write to back him with, let's say, $10. And then you would have been able to share his revenues from his 200 million streams or whatever he got like the first year. So that is like the thrilling point of being this discovery music lover, where you find artists early on. I think that's both from a financial point, but also pure fun, finding people that you like, music that you like, and also be able to help that. So it comes to the next thing, which is about the promoting. So when we have, like, take the other example, like the Norwegian-British DJ that we're working with, Alan Walker, who is like on the total opposite. He has like billions of followers and streams of the last year. And he managed to do a campaign with us during the spring where he gathered like thousands of backers that would love to be part of his team. And that's the core, because he's been building his whole career with his community. And now I think it's about 8,000 people that will be able to sort of work for him based on missions that we're providing through the platform, and help him like a digital street team push his music to the next level, feeling that they're part of something bigger than themselves. So I think the Co-Write idea is about the fan power. It's like we believe that the power of the crowd is the only power that is big enough for the future music industry to basically help.
It's a wonderful idea. I really want it to work, because I worry that it's executives in LA deciding what kids are going to be listening to, rather than the kids and music fans themselves deciding. I grew up in the midst of a really amazing music scene here in the UK. Without live bands in pubs and small venues, punk wouldn't have happened. Two-tone wouldn't have happened. An incredible part of our musical history, in my view. A whole, successive waves of different musical genres that have literally revolutionised music around the world. That's what we do here in the UK. We are a musical dream factory, this incredible talent we have. And I'm worried that because of the massive, cloying, all-pervasive influence of the big streaming platforms, it's executives with spreadsheets deciding things rather than fan power. Do you really believe Co-Write can challenge that?
Yeah, I truly believe we can. And I think it's not only because of us, it's because of the talent out there and the artists. Because, to your point, the whole history has been about great artists putting in talent and effort to sort of engage the crowd out there.
Against the odds.
So whatever is the pub, or it's like a CD sales when you sell like 100 CDs in the back of the release party. Co-Write is the same thing. It's like when you have this little great gig for the first time, and you have 200 people in the crowd, and this time you bring up your phone and you invest $10 in the band instead of buying the CDs when you go out. So our success is if we can work with these talented and ambitious artists that can, in this new era, work with the same ambition, and we can help them along the way. And to the point, when you get to the point, when you have an audience, there's this theory of 1,000 trustful fans. If you get to the point where you have 1,000 people that really believe and love what you're doing, you are able to sort of create like a sustainable business for yourself. And that's when we believe we also can come with a great opportunity and sort of alternative to the traditional record deal. Basically stay independent, because all artists need to be independent to a certain stage. And then when you get to that point, everybody starts to call. But if you can say no to these phone calls then and just keep on growing together with your audience, that's what drives us, I guess.
And how does Co-Write make money? Because obviously you're in this because you love music, you're a former, senior music executive, you want to see the industry replenished and changed the same way I do, I'm sure. But how does your business model work?
Yeah, so our business model is fairly simple. It's basically we take a percentage of the revenue that we help the artist raise, and then we also take a percentage of the revenue from the streaming revenue along with the backers. So we're basically handling the funding, and we charge for that, and we're handling the distribution, and then we help the artist with the fan engagement. So it's a percentage game, I would say. And on top of that, we also offer artists for different types of artists, different types of services, which is more like a consultancy thing on top.
And you still use your obvious music smarts? Are you still helping to select acts to boost them within the Corite platform, or is it entirely based on fan feedback?
No, I would say we're kind of early stage, so we still need to moderate. And I think eventually we will let the fans moderate for us to a larger extent. But right now we have like 500 different campaigns supplied to us on a monthly basis, and we put live, I would say, 50 of them, because it's important. The thing we have learned is that you really need to have a good song, and you really need to be ambitious enough to actually talk to your crowd. Otherwise, it won't work in our model. So we're targeting the professional independent artist, and we're targeting also the professional established artists that have been sick and tired about the old school way of doing things.
Well, Mattias Tengblad, tack ska du ha, as they say in Stockholm.
Thank you.
Very nice to meet you, and all the best of luck with Corite. Our latest guest there on Startup Britain, Mattias Tengblad, trying to revolutionise the way we listen to music, and good luck to him. Now, before we end, let's bring in some of your views from On The Money viewers and listeners. Michelle emailed me to say it seems all households are not getting help with bills. Those of us who are not in the system, like not being on benefits, will not receive any help anyway. That's very true. Dean says, why aren't we drilling gas wells while we have reasonable weather? I'm sure Quadrilla can drill and complete a well in a matter of a few weeks. Quadrilla is, of course, a company that engages in fracking gas. Their CEO, Francis Egan, has appeared on this show a couple of times. Peter got in touch to say we need to get those coal-fired power stations fired up now so they're ready for the autumn and winter. That's certainly what the Germans are doing. And Alan says, what about the rural areas where gas isn't available? Who use oil? No, nothing to help with those energy costs. Indeed, oil is such an important household energy source for many people who are in rural areas. I live in a rural area myself, and no help for them. No help for businesses either with their energy bills. No energy price cap for particularly those small and medium-sized enterprises, our manufacturers who have very high energy bills. John got in touch to say the war in Ukraine will be with us for years, as will this cost of living crisis. It's time for our government to open its eyes and ears. Coal will be our saviour. Thanks for your emails today. We've got lots more to come for the rest of the week. Tomorrow, we learn, is the mighty US Federal Reserve, the world's most important central bank, going to raise interest rates? If so, by how much? That'll have a big implication for the Bank of England's decisions on interest rates. But for now, it's all we've got time for today. Stay tuned as Alex is up next with what we need to talk about. This is GB News. I'm Liam Halligan, and that was On The Money.
Hello again, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. A rather cloudy day for many of us with scattered showers. Not for all, however. There will be some places that stay dry and there will be increasing sunny spells later in the day. A ridge of high pressure is building in. Still the influence of low pressure towards Scandinavia, however, and coolish north to northwesterly airflow across the country. So a lot of cloud cover. Sunshine in short supply and scattered showers developing, most notably Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland, into northern and central parts of England. There will be increasingly sunny spells developing later, especially for Wales and the southwest, and feeling pleasant enough with light